Ladies and gentlemen, TEDx San Antonio Compassion, Care, and Community will begin in 10 minutes. Please make your way to the theater. Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please refrain from using your phone and other devices during the show. All talks and photographs will be uploaded to TEDxSanAntonio.com in the coming weeks.
Of course, stay ready.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
you don't
You're
have to
gonna
get
be great.
ready. You just give me the sign.
Welcome to the Northwest Vista College Palmetto Center for the Arts and TEDx San Antonio Salon Compassion, Caring Community. Please welcome the president of Northwest Vista College, Dr. Amy Bosley.
Good morning. We are absolutely thrilled to have TEDx San Antonio choose us as a partner to host today's event. This partnership is especially meaningful today because our topic is compassion. Our Peace Center, in collaboration with the City of San Antonio and Alamo Colleges, has developed a campaign and a curriculum designed to help us all learn and practice skills that foster compassionate community. By engaging in gratitude, interdependence, and systems change, we aim to create a better community for ourselves and for our neighbors. Today's speakers will delve into these topics, reflecting the core principles of Compassionate USA, which inspired this TEDx San Antonio event. TED Talks have a remarkable history of inspiring change and sparking innovation. For instance, the Charter for Compassion began as a TED Talk by Karen Armstrong. She called for collective action from the world's greatest thinkers, resulting in a living, breathing, and actionable document that urges us to alleviate the suffering of others. If you're interested in connecting with the San Antonio Peace Center and Compassionate USA, please visit our interactive table right outside the theater in the lobby. You can also chat with one of our Compassionistas. Would the Compassionistas please stand so people would know who to approach? If you are a Compassionista, well, I am, so just approach me. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's make this a day full of learning, connection, and compassionate action.
Welcome to the stage, TEDx San Antonio organizer Michelle Koch.
Thank you so much for being here and a live TEDx San Antonio event. I'm super excited. Many months in the planning. TEDx San Antonio shares important topics with the world. And we've been doing that for over 14 years, 200 plus speakers, and our YouTube channel has had over 6 million views with our TED Talks. So why are we here today talking about compassion? As Dr. Bosley said, it started last year with a roundtable discussion with Mayor Ron Nirenberg and the former mayor of Uvalde, Don McLaughlin. And TEDx San Antonio organizers were there at that roundtable discussion talking about compassion and Compassionate USA. And because of that, San Antonio is now a compassion city. But what exactly is compassion? So emotion research define compassion as that feeling that arises when confronted with another's suffering and motivated to act. The fact that compassion produces energy in the body. I mean, think about it. You see events happening all around you in the world. We see events happening in the Middle East. We see events in Uvalde, in our own state. with events happening at the border, with flooding and tornadoes in Houston, and we are moved to help. I am from Hawaii, and I saw the fires in Maui, and I was moved to help. That's compassion. When people are moved to action, that's compassion. And the act of compassion produces endorphins in our body, and then it is multiplied. So when you act, you and you and you, when you act compassionately with another, then that person who receives that act of compassion feels good as well. And they in turn act compassionately with others. So it is an upward spiral. I hope today, because of the talks and our interactive displays, you also feel motivated to act compassionately. Take what you've learned today and make a difference. One person can make a difference in people's lives. That, my friends, is compassion, caring, community. Thank you so much.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. It's a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show. Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx.
Former San Antonio's
This TEDx
first
event
Coyote,
is part of a
TEDx
global
San
conversation
Antonio
that takes
speaker
place
and
every
local
day
favorite guy,
in every corner.
Rob Weichel.
Good morning. Let me be very clear. We're not here to be polite. We're here to have some fun. So we're going to try it again. Hold on. Good morning. Oh, no. Stop. I didn't even expect that. Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much. So, hold on. We're going to try it again.
And now, welcome to the stage your MC for today, former San Antonio Spurs Coyote, TEDx San Antonio speaker, and local favorite guy, Rob Weichel.
No. Stop it. Please. We only have 4 hours. Okay. All right. Enough. But you get the picture, right? We're here to have a good time. We're here to support. I want to, first of all, raise your hand if it's your first time. What? Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us this morning for TEDx Compassion Salon. First of all, I have to do some of the regular rigmarole. The bathrooms are out there. Not in here. All right? So seriously, you might know that this is being recorded to put on YouTube. So be a good audience, silence your phones, et cetera. Also, we want to thank our sponsors because we wouldn't be here without them. So thank you to Northwest Vista College. Also, the Peace Center in Compassionate USA. Thank you. And a myriad of other sponsors. Thank you guys for making this possible. Also, if you want to follow along on social media, or if you want to create some social media, use the hashtag TEDx San Antonio. Oh, I forgot to mention my voice of God that we finally got out there does not mention that I just wrote a book, shameless plug, and it's out there. So if you would like to buy, in fact, is Nathaniel Anderson out here? Hey, man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This guy bought my book a little bit ago, so thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoy. I can talk about it right. Would you like me to read it? No, no, I can't. Okay, so seriously, if it's your first time, I want to let you know part of what TEDx is all about is the challenge, right? The opportunity for discussion. So some of these speakers might make you uncomfortable. They might challenge your thoughts and your beliefs, but that's what we're here for. We're here for compassion, which in my opinion is something that's really needed in today's society, right? And so enjoy it, relish it, have those questions, have that discussion, and then you're all gonna get an opportunity to talk with each other and talk about what you think and have those discussions. So it's gonna be a great day. Is everybody ready? Not bad, man. Not bad. I feel like some people didn't even do anything here, so I'm not gonna call you out. We're just gonna try it again. Is everybody ready? All right, perfect. Well, let's get started then. Enough of me. Our first speaker has been a nurse for a number of years, and in fact, when she was a nurse at the Spurs games, she worked for Christus. Christus used to have their nurses dance on the court one game a year. And apparently, she decided to do it once, and she did her dance, just wanted to sort of get it done and get off stage, right? She was a little embarrassed, but the coyote ran right by her and scared her. And then she was on TV, all her friends saw her, it was a big deal, and she still has nightmares today. So whoever that coyote was, let's all say we hate him right now, okay? Let's be together on that. Compassionately hate that man. Seriously, also, by the way, she has practiced yoga on land, sea, and air. I have questions. I have a lot of questions about that. But ladies and gentlemen, for now, please welcome Mindy Spiegel.
Is there anyone here who's afraid of snakes? Anyone? Oh, I see a lot of hands. Those of you that didn't raise your hand, what if it was a rattlesnake and it was sitting on top of your head right now? Would you be afraid? Okay, now I have most of you. So everyone, imagine there is a rattlesnake sitting on top of your head. And I come in and I say, I have important things I need to tell you so you can take great care of yourself. How much would you hear with a snake on your head? That's what I'm thinking, not very much, right? And yet, every day in healthcare, that happens. People walk into our doors and they're afraid. And we tell them very important things and they can't hear us. Now, I'm a nurse, and so a lot of what I'm going to share with you, my research, happened in healthcare. But what I have learned in the last few years is it translates into other settings. So I challenge you as I go through this to think about your customers, your team, and you yourself, and how this might apply to you. I first learned about the snake and fear in healthcare from Colleen Sweeney. Colleen is a nurse, and from her work, she realized that almost everybody walked into our doors afraid, and she coined the term clinicophobia for fear of healthcare. Clinicophobia, fear of healthcare. This became very real to me when in 2014, my husband Barry was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. I don't know if you know this or not, but Barry is the only person who has ever had stage 3 colon cancer before. At least that's exactly how I felt the minute I heard those words. I'm a nurse in one of my hospitals with my friends and colleagues taking care of Barry, and I found myself thinking, I know there's other patients here, but this is Barry, and he has colon cancer. Wow. At that moment, I realized every patient and family who walks in the doors believes that their loved one is the sickest, most important person that you're taking care of, every single one. The other thing that happened while Barry was in the hospital was I had a notebook, and I would write down things people would tell me. I'm a note taker, and I'd write down things people would tell me. And one night I went back and looked at my notebook and I said, I never heard that. They never told me. It was in my handwriting. I heard it, but I didn't hear it. Again, I'm a nurse. I was not in a foreign place. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, and they weren't speaking a foreign language to me because we do speak a little bit different English in hospitals. And yet I couldn't hear what people were saying to me. That snake was real. The other thing I realized is that, we would oftentimes notice that people would be angry with us, and it seemed out of proportion for what had happened. And what I have realized is that when people are coming at you angry, what emotion is oftentimes under that anger? It's fear, right? They're afraid. And it comes out, it's manifested as anger. Well, when people are angry, our tendency is to either push back or flee. Will either of those reactions help someone who's scared? What if instead we leaned in to learn about that fear? What was their biggest fear, worry, concern? How could we help them? And you know what would happen? We would take care of that fear and the anger as well. So in 2018, I decided I wanted to learn more about this fear, what people were afraid of when they walked in our doors, and what was the most important thing we could do to help people. I recruited 4 wonderful nurses who were bilingual, who interviewed over 200 patients and families actually in the hospital. Some were inpatients, and some were outpatients, some were there for surgery, and some were in the ER. And we just asked 2 questions. What was your greatest fear, worry, or concern when you came in today? And the second question was, what is the most important thing we could do? Well, just like Colleen told me, almost everyone came into the hospital with fears. They were all afraid. The fears varied. It might be, will my loved one, will they be okay? Will this hurt? And what's this going to cost? Will I understand what people are going to say to me? The fears varied. But the same thing, 3 things came up as the most important things we could do. It didn't matter the setting. Keep me informed, keep me safe, and keep me comfortable. The same 3 things. Now, I hope I've already demonstrated to you with the analogy of the snake that if people don't feel safe, which is different than being safe, and feel comfortable, then they're not going to hear the information we're telling them. Remember my notebook. So an interesting thing then happened in March of 2020. One of my favorite nurses, Rachel, said to me one day, Mindy, I'm so worried I'm going to make a mistake. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. And I said, Rachel, you have a snake on your head. Now, I had taught this for a long time, so she knew what I meant. And she said, you're right, I do. Think about March of 2020, being a nurse in a hospital. It was scary. Information was changing by the minute, and Rachel was afraid. And while she was afraid, she couldn't focus and she couldn't concentrate. At that moment, I realized that there's other times that the team is afraid. One is when you get a new boss. A new leader comes in, and people are wondering, okay, who is this new leader, and what are they going to change, and what do they expect of me, and what is their hot button I better never push, right? I see a lot of you nodding. And while people are afraid, just like Rachel, they can't focus and they can't concentrate. Another time is when you get a new job. Think of your first day of your last job. How were you feeling that day when you went to work? You're probably excited and maybe a little bit scared, right? And what happens on that first day? We throw all this information at you. How much are you going to hear? When you're wondering, did I make a good decision? Am I going to fit in here? Am I going to be comfortable here? And my third one is when an organization is going through major change. A lot of people get scared, a little bit nervous, worried, anxious when there's change going on in the organization. And you know what they need? Those same three things. Keep me informed, keep me safe, and keep me comfortable, just like our patients and families. So I don't think it would be nice for me to stand up here and tell you that people that you interact with are afraid without giving you some tips about what you might be able to do, right? So I have a couple for you today. The first one, Stephen Covey says, when we listen with the intent to understand rather than the intent to reply, that's when true relationship building and communication happens. When we listen with the intent to understand rather than the intent to reply. When people are afraid, they want that relationship, that connection, that trust. So sit down, make eye contact, and listen, truly listen. My second tip is that everybody wants to be the most important person you're talking to that day. Everybody wants to feel special. Learn one thing about the person sitting in front of you that has nothing to do with why they're there. When you first learn one thing about them, they begin to feel special. They begin to feel important, and they'll feel more comfortable and be able to relax. My third tip is that words matter. Words matter. First of all, avoid technical terms. When people are scared and have that snake on their head, it's hard for them to process technical terms, so use everyday language. And then something interesting. I have learned that if we know people want to feel informed, safe, and comfortable, use those words and they'll begin to feel that way. If I say, I want to make sure you understand everything, I'm going to explain everything to you every step of the way. I want to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable with our plan today and where we're going and what we're going to be doing. When you use those words, people feel informed, safe, and comfortable. So do that. And lastly, one of the things I like to do is when I'm finished, is to just lean in. Remember my notebook here. I want to make sure they've heard me. So I'm going to lean in and say, we've been through a lot. I want to make sure I was clear. I'm going to blame me. I'm going to make sure I was clear. Tell me what you heard. What are our next steps? So I can make sure that information actually got in. There's one more time I want to share with you that snake shows up. And that is, it sometimes shows up in our lives. See, I have this wonderful mentor, Joe Ty, and Joe is a writer and he's a speaker and he's a wonderful human being. And he pushed me and poked me to write a book. And I finally did. And when I was done, I looked at Joe and said, I'm never publishing this though. It's not long enough. It's not important enough. It's not good enough. Nobody's going to want to read it. And Joe looked at me and he said, Mindy, you have a snake on your head. I go, Joe, you can't use that on me, right? That's my stuff. But Joe was exactly right. I did. I was scared. And then he said something very powerful. He said, Mindy, that snake is not on your head, it's in your head. It wasn't on my head, it was in my head. I had control over it. Where is there a snake on your head or in your head? What is something that you would like to accomplish, but fear might be holding you back? How can you feel safe, informed, and comfortable so that you can get over your fear and move on? Could it be a new job, a new career move, a book you would like to write, or perhaps you have a great idea that you would like to stand up here on this stage and share with the TEDx community. Find that way to get the information you need to feel safe and comfortable. What if all of us could become really good at recognizing when people are afraid and leaning in with compassion and learning about that fear and how we might be able to help them? Remember, when people are afraid, there's 3 things they really want from us: keep me informed, keep me safe, and keep me comfortable. Thank you for listening and for making a difference.
Thank you, Mindy. All right, what a great start, right? Does everyone feel informed now? Safe? Is the air conditioning okay? Are you comfortable? Is everybody all right? Okay, great. All right, so our next speaker, Nishant Vishwamitra. You might know he's an assistant professor at UTSA. What you might not know about him is that he likes to go off and spend time in the quiet to really think. And one time he was doing this at a state park. Unbeknownst to him, they closed said state park while he was in it. And so he goes to leave, he's locked in. So what does a guy like him do? He makes a call, they're gonna come get him, everything's fine. But he took that time in which he was stuck there to think. And while he was there thinking, he had an idea. So when he finally gets out, he races home, he calls his friend and he tells him about the idea. The idea, the friend says, I love the idea. They end up writing about it and it became a published, however professors do this, right? They publish. I don't know, I'm not a professor. So he published this idea that he got while sitting in a state park by himself. This is a guy who knows how to use his time wisely and obviously is much wiser than I. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nishant Vishwamitra.
Do you have concerns about artificial intelligence? Well, I'd like to try and provide you a counter to your concerns. Technologies can have 2 faces to them. Just like how a gun or a knife can be used to both protect and harm, technologies that were initially developed for benign purposes have found malicious uses among perpetrators. Now, this aspect of technology is known as the dual-use dilemma. For example, encryption. Encryption was a technology that was initially developed to facilitate private communication between 2 parties and to also protect confidential information. But now, encryption is also used by certain bad actors to hide illegal content such as child sexual abuse materials or CSAM and to evade detection by authorities.
It's really, yeah.
Now there's also the other side of the spectrum.
Not a good planner.
How many of you used GPS to come here today?
That's really
Well, me too. Yeah, GPS, a technology that I personally cannot live without, was actually initially developed for military navigation and targeting. But now GPS is used by everyone to find their favorite restaurants, among other things. Similarly, radar. Radar was another technology that was initially developed during the Second World War for detecting enemy ships and crafts. And now radar is used for weather forecasting and thus for saving lives in areas that are especially prone to hurricanes in our nation. Sun Tzu, the Chinese military strategist, said, "In the midst of chaos, there's also opportunity." Now, similar to these technologies that have the dual-use dilemma, another new disruptive technology known as generative artificial intelligence, or generative AI, is taking our nation and the world by storm. Generative AIs such as ChatGPT are different from traditional AIs such as face recognition. While both of these AIs are first trained on a large amounts of training data sets in a supervised manner, generative AIs go a couple of steps further. Generative AIs are then trained on multiple contextual and reasoning-based subtasks like question answering, and finally, they're trained by humans in a process known as reinforcement learning based on human feedback, wherein humans rate the responses of a generative AI as good or bad. And this is what makes generative AI so good, so helpful to the prompts that we give it to get answers and outputs from a generative AI. Now, generative AIs are capable of creating new ideas, new products, new services that are making our lives easier, more productive, and more creative. But they're also bringing in widespread fears of automating away our jobs, of developing a conscience and attacking their creators, of making things that just lack creativity and suppressing human ingenuity. But what if generative AIs can be used to make the internet a safer space for all? Mark Natnagara, who's also a TEDx speaker and an educationist and a proponent of AI in education, said while referring to traditional AIs that AIs can't experience, generalize, reason, reflect, think abstractly, or understand relevance. But what if generative AIs can do some of these things? I study how to use AI to prevent cyber harm, and I would like to propose this idea that generative AIs can be used to detect cyber harm, issues like cyberbullying, online hate and harassment, fake news, and the proliferation of unsafe images. Critical issues that our society is facing today. I began my research career in 2018 trying to detect cyberbullying in text and images using traditional AI. And while we were successful in achieving a good level of detection accuracy, these traditional AI models were still quite limited. Have you ever heard some people use this phrase, "I know it when I see it"? Yes, when asked to rationalize their decision about identifying something, some people say, "I know it when I see it," indicating that they cannot rationalize about their decision. And this is how these traditional AI models kind of worked. They were detecting cyberbullying in a very different way than what we humans perceive as cyberbullying. These traditional AI models were only detecting certain cyberbullying patterns that existed in their training data sets. Thus, I know it when I see it. Now, the issues of cyber harm, right? Issues like cyberbullying, online hate and harassment, and fake news, these issues are very hard to detect automatically. And why is that? That is because these are deeply contextual issues. These are social issues that even we humans struggle to fully comprehend. Social media platforms use a combination of human moderators as well as automated tools to detect and flag down posts that contain cyber harm. But the problem is that moderators are only human. We cannot have eyes everywhere and all the time. And automated tools are just based on traditional AIs. They lack the capability to fully capture the context that is needed to detect cyber harm accurately. A particularly alarming incident that happened with me was when I was speaking to a law enforcement agent who was describing her job. And one of her roles was it to go through and review pictures that are taken from a crime scene investigation. And typically these pictures are very disturbing. They could contain child sexual abuse materials, or they could contain violence. And her role was it to go through these pictures to maybe identify the victim in the picture or identify certain clues or evidence from the background in these pictures. And you can only imagine the kind of trauma, the kind of PTSD someone like this would have when looking at such pictures over and over again. Now, generative AIs are becoming more and more pervasive in our daily lives. With just a simple prompt, the homework or the report that used to take hours to do can now be done in just a few seconds. But what generative AIs can also do is human-like reasoning. Yes, when prompted in a certain way, generative AIs, especially large language models, can be made to reason the way we humans reason. Now, many research teams all across the world are leveraging generative AIs to detect cyber harm. Large language models like ChatGPT are being used to detect online hate, even the kinds of online hate that we had never previously witnessed before, like the anti-Asian hate that erupted during the COVID-19 pandemic. Large vision language models, which are large language models that are equipped with vision technologies, are being used to detect and flag down pictures that are taken from harmful children's games and that were being used to proliferate these games to children on social media platforms. These large vision language models are also being used to make unsafe pictures safer by first identifying and pinpointing those regions in the image that are unsafe, and then targetedly blurring out only these unsafe regions so that the rest of the image is available for reviewing, thus making this whole process a little bit more safer to a law enforcement agent. I recently came across another fascinating study that had two large language models argue against one another about whether a meme is harmful or not, and a judge LLM taking a final decision based on the arguments presented by these two argumentative generative AIs. I would like to leave you with an idea, and the idea is this: generative AI for good. I would like to urge everyone here in this room to try out a decision framework that uses a generative AI to detect cyber harm. And this is how this framework goes. First, define a problem of cyber harm in a way that it can be operationalized. For example, online hate can be defined as a piece of text that contains derogatory or disparaging words and a target group or an individual, and these derogatory or disparaging words aimed at this target group or individual. And while coming up with this definition, just think of a way how you as a human would reason about this definition. Next, divide this problem of cyber harm into several subproblems based on the definition. Use a generative AI like ChatGPT to detect these subproblems and solve these subproblems separately by writing prompts to solve these subproblems. Put the results of these subproblems back together to solve the main problem. And finally, based on a few samples of cyber harm that you could possibly find online, test and refine your decision framework on these samples. And when you test your decision framework on these samples, you will see how well it works in detecting cyber harm. I would urge everyone here today to go home and try this framework for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you so much. But before I let you go, I've got a quick question for you, ma'am. So what you're speaking to, I understand what you're doing is, I'll call it in a lab, right? It's hypothetical, your generative AI models that you're doing. When do you think that might be released to the world to actually slow down harm to children in reality?
Yes, that's a great question, Rob. And I think, so these are in research papers, so they are kind of hypothetical still, but there are models already that are doing this, and there are newer models that are coming out that kind of use generative AI to do that. So I think in the next few years, when this technology is there yet, and then that's when it'll be deployed on a large scale. Yeah.
And hopefully you'll be a part of all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, Nishant.
Thank you.
I'm a professional troublemaker. As my job is to critique the world, the shoddy systems, and the people who refuse to do better. As a writer, as a speaker, as a shady Nigerian, I feel like my purpose is to be this cat. I am the person who's looking at other people like, I need you to fix it. That is me. I want us to leave this world better than we found it. And how I choose to affect change is by speaking up, by being the first, and by being the domino. For a line of dominoes to fall, one has to fall first, which then leaves the other choiceless to do the same. And that domino that falls, we're hoping that, okay, the next person that sees this is inspired to be a domino. Being the domino for me looks like speaking up and doing the things that are really difficult, especially when they're needed, with the hope that others will follow suit. And here's the thing. I'm the person who says what you might be thinking, but dare not to say. And a lot of times people think that we're fearless. The people who do this, we're fearless. We're not fearless. We're not unafraid of the consequences or the sacrifices that we have to make by speaking truth to power. What happens is we feel like we have to, because there are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall. We're not doing it without fear. Now let's talk about fear. I knew exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor. Dr. Lovey was the dream. I was Doc McStuffins before it was a thing. And I remember when I went to college, my freshman year, I had to take Chemistry 101 for my pre-med major. I got the first and last D of my academic career. So I went to my advisor and I was like, okay, let's drop the pre-med because this doctor thing is not gonna work because I don't even like hospitals. So let's just consider that done for. And that same semester, I started blogging. That was 2003. So as that one dream was ending, another was beginning. And then what was a cute hobby became my full-time job when I lost my marketing job in 2010. But it still took me 2 more years to say, I'm a writer. 9 years after I started writing before I said, I'm a writer, because I was afraid of what happens without 401ks, without, how am I gonna keep up my shoe habit? That's important to me. So it took me that long to own this thing. That was what my purpose was. And then I realized fear has a very concrete power of keeping us from doing and saying the things that are our purpose. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna let fear rule my life. I'm not gonna let fear dictate what I do. And then all these awesome things started happening and dominoes started to fall. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, 2015, I turned 30. It's gonna be my year of do it anyway. Anything that scares me, I'm gonna actively pursue it. So I'm a Capricorn. I like my feet solidly on the ground. I decided to take my first ever solo vacation, and it was out of the country to the Dominican Republic. So on my birthday, what did I do? I went ziplining through the forest of Punta Cana. And for some odd reason, I had on business casual. Don't ask why. And I had an incredible time. Also, I don't like being submerged in water. I like to be, again, on solid ground. So I went to Mexico and swam with dolphins underwater. And then the cool thing that I did also that year that was my mountain was I wrote my book, I'm Judging You the Do Better Manual. And I had to own that whole writing thing now, right? Yes. But the very anti-me thing that I did that year that scared the crap out of me, I went skydiving. We're about to fall out the plane. I was like, I've done some stupid things in life. This is one of them. And then we come falling down to earth and I literally lose my breath as I see earth. And I was like, I just fell out of a perfectly good plane on purpose. What is wrong with me? But then I looked down at the beauty and I was like, this is the best thing I could have done. This is an amazing decision. And I think about the times when I have to speak truth. It feels like I am falling out that plane. It feels like that moment when I'm at the edge of the plane and I'm like, you shouldn't do this. But then I do it anyway because I realize I have to. Sitting at the edge of that plane and kind of staying on that plane is comfort to me. And I feel like every day that I'm speaking truth against institutions and people who are bigger than me and just forces that are more powerful than me, I feel like I'm falling out of that plane. but I realized comfort is overrated because being quiet is comfortable. Keeping things the way they've been is comfortable. And all comfort has done is maintain the status quo. So we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable by speaking these hard truths when they're necessary. And for me, though, I realized that I have to speak these truths because honesty is so important to me. My integrity is something I hold dear. Justice, I don't think justice should be an option. We should always have justice. Also, I believe in shea butter as a core value. And I think the world would be better if we were all more moisturized. But besides that, with these as my core values, I have to speak the truth. I have no other choice in the matter. But then people like me, the professional troublemakers, should not be the only ones who are committed to being these dominoes who are always falling out the planes or being the first one to take this hit. People are so afraid of these acute consequences, not realizing that there are many times when we walk in rooms and we are some of the most powerful people in those rooms. We might be the second most powerful, third most powerful. And I firmly believe that our job in those times is to disrupt what is happening. And then if we're not the most powerful, if two more of us band together, it makes us powerful. It's like co-signing the woman in the meeting, you know, the woman who can't seem to get her word out, or just making sure that other person who can't make a point is being heard. Our job is to make sure they have room for that. Everyone's well-being is community business. If we made that a point, we'd understand that for the times when we need help, we wouldn't have to look around so hard if we made sure we were somebody else's help. And there are times when I feel like I have taken very public tumbles and falls. Like a time when I was asked to speak at a conference and they wanted me to pay my way there. And then I did some research and found out the white men who spoke there got compensated and got their travel paid for. The white women who spoke there got their travel paid for. The Black women who spoke there were expected to actually pay to speak there. And I was like, what do I do? And I knew that if I spoke up about this publicly, I could face financial loss. But then I also understood that my silence serves no one. So I fearfully spoke up about it publicly, and other women started coming out to talk about, I too have faced this type of pay inequality. And it started a conversation about discriminatory pay practices that this conference was participating in. I felt like I was the domino the time I read a disturbing memoir by a public figure and wrote a piece about it. And I knew this person was more powerful than me and could impact my career. But I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta sit at the edge of this plane, maybe for 2 hours. And I did. And I pressed publish and I ran away. And I came back to a viral post and people being like, oh my God, I'm so glad somebody finally said this. And it started a conversation about mental health and self-care. And I was like, okay, all right, this thing that I'm doing, I guess, all right, it's doing something. And then so many people have been the domino when they talk about how they've been assaulted by powerful men. And it's made millions of women join in and say, me too. So shout out to Tarana Burke for igniting that movement. People and systems count on our silence to keep us exactly where we are. Now, being the domino sometimes comes down to being exactly who you are. So I've been a shady somebody since I was 3. This is me on my 3rd birthday. But I've been this girl all my life. And I feel like even that's been the domino, because in a world that wants us to walk around as representatives of ourselves, being yourself can be a revolutionary act. And in a world that wants us to whisper, I choose to yell. When it's time to say these hard things, I ask myself 3 things. 1, did you mean it? 2, can you defend it? 3, did you say it with love? If the answer is yes to all 3, I say it and let the chips fall. That's important. That checkpoint with myself always tells me, yes, you're supposed to do this. Telling the truth, telling thoughtful truth should not be a revolutionary act. Speaking truth to power should not be sacrificial, but they are. But I think if more of us chose to do this for the greater good, we'd be in better spaces than we are right now. Speaking of the greater good, I think we commit ourselves to telling truths to build bridges to common ground. And bridges that aren't based on truth will collapse. So it is our job, it is our obligation, it is our duty to speak truth to power, to be the domino. Not just when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Thank you.
All right. We've got another speaker coming up, ladies and gentlemen, and this guy really is interesting. First of all, he's been a part of a couple improvisation troupes. In fact, he says he taught improv, but he also interned at MTV. Again, I have questions, a lot of questions, but those will have to wait, ladies and gentlemen. For now, please welcome Sinclair Caesar III.
Have you ever had a story that you were too embarrassed to tell anyone? It was 2018, and it was the best year of my life so far. My wife and I found out that we were bringing in new life into this world. I felt a mix of both anxiety and happiness because I was becoming a first-time father. At the same time, my side hustles of being a blogger and a speaker were taking off. I was on top of the world. Late one morning in April, I received a text from a friend that said, "Your tweet that you posted about mental health went viral." And I was just filled with happiness as my inbox filled with positive messages from around the world. The tweet said, "My therapist taught me to interrupt my anxious thoughts by asking myself, what if things work out? And what if all my hard work pays off?" Life was sunshine and it continued to get brighter, but I didn't know how much my life would start to decline as the year went on. First, it was the sleep. I was running on 2 and 3 hours of sleep, but I felt invincible. Then I was more productive than ever before. I got a lot done. I burned through our finances at a high rate, and this behavior is often praised in the world of entrepreneurship, but things continue to worsen. Then I got angrier and angrier. It's like I ingested this potion that turned me into an unrecognizable villain, causing chaos wherever I went. And then I hit the point of no return. I started to take risks that you see someone take if they were in a midlife crisis or if their lives were in a downward spiral and no one knew what to do or say. If they had been trained on the signs and symptoms that I was exhibiting, and if the power of stigma wasn't so strong, they could have helped, but no one knew what to do. I carried this experience on my own, and I fell deeper and deeper into shame, into this cave of loneliness. I didn't see a way out, and I was losing my will to live. The only time I left the home was to go to library story time with my daughter, singing songs and playing with her and just enjoying her growing up. Those were the hiccups of happiness in my life. You know, one day, a hot morning in Baltimore, I woke up on our dusty, old blue couch, and I felt like I had a 30-pound rock on my chest, weighing me down as I was sinking deeper and deeper into shame. Days before, my wife told me about how hard it was when I was experiencing my manic episode to find answers. What can I do to help my husband? Eventually, she found Bipolar Hope magazine. And she said, baby, read this whenever you feel ready, but I think it could help. So that's what I did that morning. I flipped through pages and pages and pages, and I stopped because the picture of a Black man stopped me. He had served in the military and had experienced a similar manic episode that I did. It was devastating. It was life-ruining. But he shared that even though he went through this season of pain and suffering, he was still thankful to be alive. And his words hit me like a ton of bricks. Because here was someone that society says is strong, unbreakable, invincible. And he's sharing this deeply personal story with the world. Now, those words didn't save my life in the moment, but eventually they did. So I have two questions. Number one, did you have common conversations around a dinner table about mental health when you were growing up? Number two, did you hear negative things about people who had mental illness like, oh, she's crazy, or he's not fit for leadership, or he can't be trusted. He's clearly off his meds. And this is why we should all be mental health storytellers. And I'm not saying you need to get up on this stage and share your deepest and darkest pain. No, you are a mental health storyteller when you share about a time that you struggled, or you share about what you've been doing to practice self-care, or when you share about a moment where you couldn't find a way out, but you found a little spark of hope and it helped to slowly lead you out of a dark place. Now, when I say the word mental health, it evokes this fear in people. They fear that people will judge them for who they've been at some of the darkest moments in their life. And that's valid, because who wants to be judged for who they've been at moments that they're not proud of? But when we hold back that information from the people that count on us, that are there to support us, that could lift us up, we don't get the support that we need. Consider the construction worker. He's been working long hours, tired, exhausted, distant from his family, and he started to slip deeper into substance use, but he doesn't know who to turn to or where to turn to. Consider the CEO who's been struggling because the last quarter was tough, but she can't share with anybody. She can't reach out for mentorship because if she does, she figures that she'll be seen as incompetent or unfit for leadership. That's how powerful the stigma around mental health is. But I want to break this up, and I want you all to remember the 3 M's. Mental health is just a state of well-being. So when you're having coffee, or when you're with your friends and family, or when you're just sitting down and feeling good. A mental health challenge looks like grief, sadness, uncertainty. And then you have mental illness, which looks like a diagnosis, medication. And someone like me who lives with a mood disorder, but I want to let you know that it does not define who I am. It is something that I live with. Now, when we all come to the conversation around mental health with the mindset that mental wellness is a continuum, we find ourselves finding the conversation around mental health more relevant to each of us. Meaning, if you've never had a crisis, if you don't have a diagnosis, the conversation around mental health is still relevant to you. You know, when we all become mental health storytellers, we get more in touch with our story, and we're able to ask others about their story. But it's kind of scary to ask someone about their story. Because what if I get it wrong, and what if I offend someone? But how about we do the brave thing of asking someone, how are you doing right now? And then listening non-judgmentally. And then following up with, tell me more, but only if you're comfortable with that. And then making sure that they know, I am here to support you. You can't get rid of me. I got you. In my years of working in higher education, supporting students at 3 a.m. as a crisis manager at some of the worst times in their lives, as well as leading mental health workshops and sharing about this mental health continuum, and then working with therapists and psychiatrists on my own trauma and the things that I'm processing, I've learned that 3 lies keep us from sharing our own stories. Lie number 1, your story doesn't matter. Lie number 2, no one wants to hear your story. And lie number 3, when you share your story, you lose. But the truth is that people not only want to hear your story, but they need to hear your story. Your story absolutely matters, maybe more than you'll ever know. And when you share, they win. You win. We win. So here's how easy it is for you to share your mental health story. When I was a speaker for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, during their program called In Our Own Voice, I learned how to share my story in 3 parts. What happened? What helped? What's next? I want to invite you to consider your story. Consider the parts of your mental health story that perhaps you might want to share. Like, I was going through a time where I was struggling and I used this resource of support to get me through. Or, I know what it's like to have some bad days. Here's one thing that I experienced and here's how hard it was for me. Or, you know what? I'm hopeful now because I went through this tough thing and I was able to see the other side of it, but it took some time and I really haven't told anybody until right now. When we all become mental health storytellers, we help others unlearn mental health shame. So share your story. You might just save someone's life. You know, I still see that tweet circulating the internet. The tweet that said, "What if things work out?" And I'm thankful for how things have worked out for me. Because I have this little girl. She's 5. And she's the most beautiful thing in the world. And I have my loving, strong wife. And we have one more little one on the way later this summer. And I'm thankful to be here because it's different. It's not the same, but we're here. And so I'm sending that same hopefulness to you today, right now, in this moment. Wherever you are, however you're showing up right now, to whomever you're becoming. Because your mental health story matters. And you matter. And I'm glad you're here. That's it.
All right, kids, you've done it. It's snack time. So we're giving you 20 minutes. You're gonna go out there. Our volunteers will have some snacks for you. Go out, enjoy the property, but be back in 20. You got it, kids? All right, see you soon.
sanantonio.com in the coming weeks.
To have TEDx San Antonio choose us as a partner to host today's event. This partnership is especially meaningful today because our topic is compassion. Our Peace Center, in collaboration with
Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to the theater. The program will resume in 5 minutes.
I want to ask you guys a question. How many languages do you speak? This is not a rhetorical question. I actually want you to think of a number. For some of you, it's pretty easy. Inside your head, you're like, it's 1, you're speaking it, buddy, I'm done. Others of you, maybe you're wondering if the language that an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend taught you, where you learned all the cuss words, if it counts, go ahead and count it. Be nice to yourself. When I asked myself the question, I came up with 4, arguably 5 if I've been drinking. Con un po' di vino posso parlare italiano. Huh? Cheers. But on closer examination, I came up with 83 languages. And I got tired and I stopped counting. And it forced me to revisit this definition that we have of language. The first entry said, the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured or conventional way. The definition at the bottom refers to specialized fields like medicine, science, tech. We know they have their own vernacular, their own jargon. But what most interested me was that definition right in the center there. The system of communication used by a particular community or country. And I'm not interested in altering this definition. I'm interested in applying it to everything we do. Because I believe that we speak far more languages than we realize. And for the rest of our time together, I'm going to attempt to speak in one language that is native to every single human being in this room. But that changes things a little bit, because then it's no longer a presentation. It becomes a conversation. And in any conversation, there must be some sort of interaction. And for any interaction to happen, there has to be a degree of willingness on both parties. And I think if we just are willing, we will see the magic that can happen with just a little bit of willingness. So I've chosen a relatively low risk common denominator that can kind of gauge if we're all willing. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Now you're talking. Para toda la gente que habla español, por favor pónganse de pie y mirar a una persona sentado a cualquier lado y comenzar a reír. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Now, if that felt a little bit awkward, I promise there was no joke being had at your expense. I simply asked the Spanish-speaking audience to stand up, look at a person that was sitting close to them, and laugh. And I know that wasn't nice, and I'm sorry, but in that moment, some of us felt something. You see, we're often aware of what language does when we speak somebody's language, what it does to connect, what it does to bind. But we often forget what it does when you can't speak that language, what it does to isolate, what it does to exclude. And I want us to hold on to, as we journey through kind of our little walk of languages here. میخوام الان معنی تعارف توضیح بدم. I said in Farsi, I'd like to translate this idea of ta'aruf in the Persian culture, which really, it has no equivalent in the English lexicon. The best definition would be something like an extreme grace or an extreme humility, but that doesn't quite get the job done. So I'm going to give you an example. If 2 gentlemen were walking by each other, it'd be very common for the first one to look at the other one and say, "Mokhlesetam," which means I am indebted to you. The other gentleman would respond back, "Chakeretam," which means I opened my shirt for you. The first guy would respond back, "Nokaretam," which means I am your servant. And then the second guy would respond back to him, "Khakizira patam," which literally means I am the dirt beneath your feet. Here's an exhibit for you guys in case you didn't get the picture. And I share that with you because with new languages come new concepts that didn't exist before. And the other thing is, sometimes we think language is about understanding the meaning of a word, but I believe language is about making a word meaningful for yourself. If I were to flash this series of words on the screen, some of you, you'd know exactly what it is right away. Others of you, you might struggle a little bit. And I could probably draw a pretty clear-cut line right around the age of 35 and older, 35 and younger. And for those of us that are in the know, we know that's text speak or SMS language. It's a series of characters meant to convey the most amount of meaning with the least amount of characters, which sounds pretty similar to our definition of language, a system of communication used by a community. Now, anyone who's ever gotten to an argument via text can make a case for how it's maybe not the best method of communication. But what if I told you that what you saw earlier was a modern-day love letter? If you follow along, for the time being, I love you lots because you positively bring out all the best in me. And I laugh out loud. In other words, let me know what's up. Because you are a cutie, in my opinion. And as far as I know, to see you, if you're not seeing someone, would make me happy. For your information, I'll be right there forever. In any case, keep in touch. No response necessary. All my best wishes. Don't care if anyone sees this. Don't go there. See you later. Bye for now. Hugs and kisses. You only live once. Kind of a modern day Romeo or Juliet. In that moment, if you laughed, you spoke another language that needs no explanation. Laughter. It's one of the most common languages in the world. We don't have to explain it to each other. It's just something we all feel. And that's why things like laughter and things like music are so prevalent, because they seem to somehow transcend explanation and convey a profound amount of meaning. Every language we learn is a portal by which we can access another language. The more you know, the more you can speak. And it's something common that we all do. We take any new concept and we filter it through an already existing access of reality within us. And that's why languages are so important, because they give us access to new worlds, not just people. It's not just about seeing or hearing. It's about feeling, experiencing, sharing. And despite these languages that we've covered, I really don't think we've covered one of the most profound languages that there are, and that's the language of experience. That's why when you're talking with someone, if they've shared something that you've shared, you don't need to explain it much. Or that's why when you're sharing a story and you finish and the people you're talking to don't quite get it, the first thing we all say is, I guess you had to be there. I guess you had to be here this week to know what this is about. It's kind of hard to explain, isn't it? And for the sake of our research, I'm going to close by asking that you participate one more time in this language of experience. I'm going to filter through some languages. And if I'm speaking your language, I'm going to ask that you just stand and you stay standing. You don't need to ask permission. Just let me know that you see me and I can also see you if you speak this language of experience. Do you speak this language? When I was growing up in primary school, at the end of the year, we would have these parties, and we'd vote on whether we wanted to celebrate at an amusement park or a water park. And I would really hope the party wasn't at a water park, because then I'd have to be in a bathing suit. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I approach a dressing room, my sweat glands start activating on their own, because I know the garment is not going to look like it did on me, like it did on that mannequin. Or how about this? When I would go to family functions or family gatherings, every time I wanted a second plate, and I usually did, it was a whole exercise in cost-benefit analysis. My relatives looking at me like, I don't know, you really need that? Looks like you're doing okay there, bud. Did my cheeks have a big pinch me sign that I didn't see? And if you're squirming or you're laughing or you stood up, you're beginning to stand, you're speaking the language that I endearingly call the language of growing up a fat kid. And any body image issue is a dialect of that language. I want you to stay standing. Again, if I'm speaking your language, please go ahead and stand. Imagine two bills in my hand. One is the phone bill, and one is the electric bill. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pay one off, let the other one go, which means I might not have enough to pay both at the current moment. You got to be resourceful. You got to figure it out. And if you're standing, you know the language of barely making ends meet, of financial struggle. And if you've been lucky enough to speak that language, you understand that there is no motivator of greatness like deficiency. Not having resources, not having looks, not having finances can often be the barren soil from which the most productive seeds are painstakingly plowed and harvested. I'm going to ask if you speak this language. The second you recognize it, feel free to stand. When we heard the diagnosis, I thought, not that word. Anything but that word. I hate that word. And then you ask a series of questions. Are you sure? Has it spread? How long? Doctor, how long? And a series of answers determines a person's life. I mean, my dad was hungry. We'd all rush to the dinner table to eat because that's what we did before. We ate together. So we were going to continue doing that. And I didn't understand why we were losing this battle, because I was taught if you fight and you have the right spirit, you're supposed to win. and we weren't winning. For any of you that stood up, you know very well that I'm speaking the language of watching a loved one battle cancer. Any terminal illness is a derivative of that language. I want to speak one last language. Oh, no, I'm listening. Yeah. No. Me and you, right here. Yep. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Or imagine the lights are all off and a blue light is just shining in your face as you're laying on the bed. And I know some of you, like me, have dropped that phone right on your face. Or this one, right? Passenger seat freaking out. Like, can you watch the road? And for anybody that stood up, you speak the language that I like to call the language of disconnection. It's been called the language of connection, but I like to call it the language of disconnection. I don't mean disconnection, I mean disconnection, human disconnection, disconnected from each other, from where we are, from our own thoughts, so we can occupy another space. If you're not standing, you probably know what it's like to feel left out. You probably, you know what it's like when everybody's a part of something and you're not. You know what it's like being the minority. And now that I'm speaking your language, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and stand, since we're speaking the same language. Because I believe that language of being the minority is one of the most important languages you can ever speak in your life. Because how you feel in that position of compromise will directly determine how you act in that position of power. Thank you for participating. If you take a seat, I want to speak one last language. This one, you don't need to stand. I just want to see if you recognize it. Most of the girls in the world are complaining about it. Most of the poems in the world have been written about it. Most of the music on the radio be hitting about it, kicking about it.